Hey mom, how you doing?
I am doing very well, Lindsay. How's your day going?
It's going really good. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm
Awesome.
super excited. We've
Mhm.
got a really cool person joining the podcast with us today. This is someone I actually had the pleasure of presenting live with in this past month, which was really nice. We are honored to have Mr. Thomas Mann of Aureus Analytics joining us. Thomas, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, ladies. I feel honored seeing the past guests that have been on here. I'm just really excited to have made the cut, honestly.
That's funny. You're funny. So hey, Thomas, we've been traveling the countries and I've gotten to know you since we presented together. Actually, I think I've seen you like 3 weeks in a row, 2 weeks in a row, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of nice at our past events. But for the people out there that don't know you, would you mind giving just a little bit of background? Why are you in this industry? What attracted you to it? And what you're doing in this industry?
So I love answering this question because it oftentimes is a similar path to maybe not dissimilar to Lindsay, actually, but it's all in the family, right? So my dad was a 36-year captive agent in North Carolina, and I had, been hearing about deductibles and coverage provisions and, policy provisions long before anyone in the same age demographic. So, when we got to college and had renter's insurance and this and that, and friends are like, I don't understand any of this. I'm like, what do you mean you don't understand what a deductible is? Anyway, so that was it was insurance nerd from early on. But I didn't carry. This is something you guys have both heard from agency owners and past and present. I didn't want anything to do with insurance, right? Nope, no thanks. I've heard enough about it. Dad's talked about it. I've seen the claim service, where you have to get involved in everything, and so it was timely. I'm a shut hunt, mick hunt, Tar Heel. I'm a UNC alum. So after college, I went into something completely unrelated, and a good family friend of mine who was an agency manager for that same captive that my dad worked for, basically called me out of the blue and was like, "Hey, I've got an agent retiring, and it's time for you to join the big leagues." Right, and that was kind of I wasn't looking, and it was just serendipity, and I had changed. I learned a lot more about insurance in that intervening time, and seeing more of the trends the industry was taking. So I joined as a captive agent myself, and I stayed in that. It was multi-line. It was life, small commercial, all PNC, even health. So I was in that world in North Carolina for 4 years. Saw the writing on the wall with the captive side of the business. Saw that there was more opportunity and options for independence. So I made that jump. Was in an independent agency for 2 years there, and then the bug came calling. So Lindsay, I gave you some brief intel a minute ago about Cat at Agency Zoom. So got onto the Agency Zoom team when opportunity presented itself. That was um, 2020, and ran customer success there. Ended up running the customer success team and implementations for them for over 2 years. So that's the story. That's the why, Carrie. But it really is, regardless of whether you're on more of the periphery like we are, or whether you're an agent in the trenches every day. I mean, it is an industry that has been good to me personally and to my family, but also, it makes a real impact. Even though you'll hear at a lot of these events, it's maybe not the sexiest industry to young folks coming in, but it is an industry that makes a difference, and it's some would say a big industry, but a small community.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. Some would say that. That's right. Oh, it's super funny.
I want to lead us today in this episode, kind of focus our conversation around data, bad data specifically, and how that impacts your agency overall, implementing technology, yada, yada, yada. There are so many things that having bad data impacts. So my first question that I want to kick us off with is, what is bad data? How do you know if you have bad data? What does that even mean in like the sense of data, right?
In closing, data. Got it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Lindsay, let me tell you,
Period.
um, I love this talking about data because in my role as director of customer success at Aureus, same thing in customer success at AZ. Data is a topic even when you're starting with a blank slate, right? If you're an agency, you're never starting with a blank slate, right? There are skeletons in this closet. Now that being said, with agencies, you said, how do you know you have bad data, Lizzie? So it's kind of one of those, if your data is bad, or at least if it's bad enough, you're going to know, right? There's going to be signs. Now, that being said, when we get into, how does that show up? How do you audit it? How do you know? Uh, One of the first things that I address head on with new customers at Aureus and have always done on the implementation side is you need to get your house in order right first. I mean, that is always I think Carey would definitely back me up on that, because if you don't know the score, how can you win a game, right? And this touches on a lot of different things, but when we talk about bad data, generally, Lindsay, we're talking about AMS data, right? So
Yep.
common scenario, they have acquired a book, maybe it was a paper agency, it was an older agency, data was maybe printed on a dot matrix printer. I don't know. But all of that to say, it was never never rolled correctly. And even if they had sterling data from the time, they were more forward thinking, they were a digital agency. They started on a modern AMS platform. The records are good. You inject one of these acquisitions, and now your data quality is significantly suffering. So where you're going to see that a lot of the times is going to be in renewal and policy level, information. So, hey, we didn't have downloads before. This agency didn't download. Now they do. They're not reconciled. So we've got, zombie policies where the dates don't match. We have producers. We have CSR staff that are no longer with my business that are still coded to active accounts. Data hygiene, I would say, Lindsay, is probably the first part of bad data. So I promise, ladies, did not talk about our software, Donna, or things that Aureus can do more than is absolutely necessary. But this is, since data integrity is something near and dear to my heart, one of the things, Lindsay, when I talk about implementation, that's oftentimes used as a crutch by agencies is, hey, my data's bad. I can't use a platform like Donna, or I'm not ready for agency Zoom, or, whatever the case may be. It doesn't have to be either of those two, but that's oftentimes a built-in, hey, let's put it off. Let's wait. But in actuality, you ask Lindsay, how will you know you have bad data? Tool implementation, right? Tools that show you that your data is bad and really put the D on your report card front and center. That is one of the best ways. And so there's a process that we've built called a data quality index, which is going to analyze all of your AMS data around completeness, accuracy, and my personal favorite, contextual mismatches, like, hey, this is a person that's no longer here, or the policy term is out of spec, even though it still says active. So some of those type things.
I would agree that when you have big data when you try to use the information to make a decision. That's the thing. Like when your gut tells you my business is this way, you run a report or you do something in order to drive a decision and it's off. Like those are the things, that's a practical way that oh goodness. Or you run the report and you make all the adjustments in your head of the things that that aren't right, but it's still that way in your system. So for me, lots of times agencies find bad data because they go through evaluation process and fresh eyes are looking at their information, and I'm making conclusions about their business's strengths, weaknesses, risks, opportunities that they're like, well, wait, actually, that's not right. And this isn't accurate. And those are the things, like, that's not my lead carrier. We don't put that much. And it's because their information isn't completely accurate. So I think a lot of times by implementing a tool or going through a process, you're able to identify it because you're looking at your business a different way. Right. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's the soundbite, Gary. You know, how do you know you have bad data? You try and use it to operationalize something, and the math isn't mathing,
right.
right?
And I would agree. Like, here's the thing: bad data is not a reason not to use technology. It is a reason that you have to look at technology as a journey or as a process to implement, not that you're going to flip the switch and all of a sudden it's going to be great. So let's talk about what you've been on the side of agencies that want to innovate and want to use technology and get better in this space. What does that look like? And what's a reasonable expectation about that implementation process?
So I've got a couple, Gary, of rules, right? And this is sort of there. You could look at this like an upfront agreement in principle or contract between any vendor, that you're going to use and your agency. So you as an agency leader, that you don't have to be the principal, but someone who is steering the ship, right? You need to before you say, hey, let's just jump in the pool and use this tool, right? So data integrity is part of it, right? And I think there are tools that will help you with that. First, know where your standing is on that, or at least know that that's something that should be verified, even if your data is sterling, right? Before you really start sending it everywhere and gaining insights from it. So additionally, you've got to know where you're going, right? So you need to kind of draw up the long-term vision, and more importantly, not what is the feature set of this tool, but what is my agency looking to get out of this? What outcomes are we looking to drive from this tool? So you need to have built that plan. At least, if nothing else, you need to know where you want to end up, even if you're not entirely sure. That's where folks sitting in my seat will help, paint the actual picture for you of how we're going to get there, but know where the begin with the end in mind. Um, the one thing, and this is carries such a pitfall. So pick a champion, right? And I generally encourage it to not be the principal, right? It needs to be someone who has in the past, whether it was in an agency framework or not, but has implemented a new tool, changed a process, has that track record, but also they're in an early adopter mindset, right? They're not afraid to poke holes in something, but they're also not afraid to flex with the tool and learn the limitations and then say, how can we still keep moving forward? So having someone to own whether, and this, Carrie, I would broaden out from not just tech implementation, but anything you want to change in your agency, right? Pick not just the principal, not just top down leadership, someone to own a process, to own the tool, and be the point man or woman on this specific task. So from there, it's committing to the utilization, right? So, Carrie, something that we've seen many times is I was on a podcast with our friend Rob Bowen for Hawksoft, and they asked me, Carrie, what is the most difficult or most challenging, I think, part of working with agents? And far and away, it is something contagious known as shiny object syndrome. So I have,
Oh my God,
oh,
on a
I saw
podcast with
this.
Rob. That is the
Yeah.
perfect person for that podcast. Yes.
Yeah. And Rob's like, it's me. Hey, Taylor Swift, I'm the problem.
I'm the
Yeah.
problem.
So it's, the whole thing though with that is you really have to give something, right? A runway to see those results. Pulling the plug too early in any platform, right, is just going to lead to, because we've all seen these agencies do it, right? I've tried everything in this space and I wasn't happy with any of them. Well, if that's the conclusion you're coming to, it might be you
Right.
guys or the way you're trying to
Right.
use it, right? So that is, you really got to commit to, hey, what's our runway going to be for how long we're going to try this? And then ultimately, something is only fully implemented in as much as it's automatic. So interconnectivity, right? You're looking at platforms that are completely vertical agnostic, Zapier, API. I know, Carrie, you guys, I'm not going to get into it. You've talked enough about RPA and the bots, right? But all of these tools that will help paint a network, like a neural network for your agency, right? So every finger on this hand needs to know what every finger over here is doing. And then how can we make sure that that's all rolled up through something like a Slack or a Microsoft Teams or whatever, so everybody's on the same page? We don't have to have all these one-to-one conversations to download on how X and Y are going.
So
So that's kind of the Thomas schedule.
So what I just heard, just to recap, and then I'm going to let Lindsay ask you a question, is number one, know what the heck you're trying to do and choose accordingly. Don't go and walk through a vendor thing and say, oh, or I know so-and-so uses this. They have a completely different agency than mine. They do, they focus in a completely different area, but they're cool. So maybe I'll try the same software that they're using. Like, please don't do that. Know what you're trying to accomplish. Pick a champion, make sure that you implement it and you actually commit to the cultural change of utilizing this technology and give it the right time and space to be successful. Don't just, throw your hands in the air whenever something doesn't work immediately. But you said something crazy important that I think we glossed over, and I want to make sure everybody hears. It's not one system. Our industry is not built using one system and one system alone. They have to connect. This whole beautiful idea that you can go one place, buy one thing, and everything is solved isn't happening. It doesn't exist yet. And if it does, someone needs to come on this podcast and talk to me about it, because it doesn't exist, right? So that connectivity is work, and you're going to have to figure out how these things move and shift to keep them connected. So get rid of the fantasy that it's one, it's many, but it's the right things for your agency. And it's the invest in the people that know how to connect it for you is the other thing I would tell you, right?
Absolutely. And if we were in person right now, I'd be coming over to high five Carey. So, Lindsay, if you could make that a soundbite, that whole thing, that'd be great. Um, I will say though, Carey, there's 2 points I want to make there, not to pick on any of our colleagues or friends on the AMS side of the table, but it, you know, I have to keep my hair short so I don't pull it. When agents tell me all the time, it's got to come. Everything has to flow through my AMS. So I think that is a really myopic way of looking at technology in the insurance space these days, because there are so many things on, the cutting edge, right, for insurance that don't all have that established, network or connectivity with all of the AMSs. Now, that is not, the reason I think that's the wrong way to look at it is, instead of saying, hey, everything has to come through my AMS if I'm going to use it in my agency, you need to build that interconnectivity, right? Or have it built outside of your AMS, because guess what? Even though you might love them, people change AMSs all the time. So if everything in your agency flows through one specific piece of tech, you would be much better served, right, to have that coming, say, all through a network of connectivity that you've built, where it all comes to Slack, or it's all custom reporting for you on the back end, or it all flows to a CRM, et cetera. That to me is where you're really going to see a big change.
I would love to talk about, since we were talking about technologies that are paired together, what are the most effective tools that you've seen like paired together to actually make a difference in an agency?
So the tools I've seen, I'm not going to necessarily use product names, Lindsay, but I'll tell you the types of tools, right, that I've
Right.
seen move the
Yeah.
needle the most.
Mhm.
So first and foremost, a CRM, right? I mean, it's something where if your producers are still living in what I call the post-it pipeline, which is the call this client on the bottom of their monitor, that's a problem. And we've really got to, there's a piece, right? So automation writ large. I mean, anything that can be automated should be, in terms of, there's this whole philosophy, Lizzie, that uh, AI and automation and all these new tech tools are trying to displace humans in the agency world, or in all kinds of businesses. I actually disagree with that. I think they are trying to make us work smarter, right? Because you're still always going to need that empathy from an account manager when someone's having a tough claims issue or a problem with their carrier. right? But at the same time, we shouldn't be, you know, having the manpower, the human capital used on, hey, Lindsay, call this person and verify that this is the vehicle they told us to change, right? We can put automation and process around all of that and then have that connectivity, and that record's already there for us so that our people, our most valuable resource, our human capital, they are working on the things that they're best at and that move the needle. So automation, which can be from your CRM and a lot of other avenues. I will shout out Zapier. Just put this data there, automated. Big fan. Um, Tools that anything that helps the customer experience. So I will give an example. This touches on automation, but there is a company called Thanks.io, right? What they do is they send cards, personal touches, gift cards on an automated basis, right? So using technology to appear, as or more relationship driven than you've ever been, right? Keeping that human touch, but let's make it smart, right? And that's where those types of tools can really go a long way in the automation piece. I know you guys have touched on bots, RPA. Hey, let's have a computer do it for us. But I'm actually going to take a left turn for someone who's in the tech space. One of the biggest things I've seen move the needle in an agency: coaching, consulting, right? And that is whether it's someone, hey, I need someone to build this network of connectivity. I need this system to talk to this system, and I'm not a programmer. Okay, invest in that. Carey mentioned it earlier. That upfront lift to pay you so much value over time, right? Get it done one time, let it run, let it save your people time, let it make them happier. That to me is magic. And, it doesn't even have to be around a consultant who's going to build something for you. If you guys are having trouble changing old habits in an agency of like, hey, how do we adapt to CRM, right? There are a lot of awesome coaches. There are things like, I don't know if you guys have heard, shout out this company called Agency Focus. um, the speaking of data integrity, speaking of knowing the score, right? There's this concept that's really common of like, we've got to do it all in house. And, you're just taking more time than you need. And you're probably going to spend more money doing it that way than just bringing in an expert, right? Embracing that, you don't have to be the master of everything, right? In your agency, in your business, and bring in folks that can help shorten that runway, shorten that learning curve.
It's funny. I probably 3 or 4 years ago, I was doing a presentation on the impact of data and technology on an agency. And I made the suggestion. Here's the thing. If you're not training with the technology that you have today, it is moving fast. They are adding features. They're doing all kinds of things. They're connecting with others. If you are having trouble inside your agency and you don't know how to solve it, start with what you already have, because you're probably not utilizing what it has to offer. And it might not be a new tool. It might be turning on or expanding upon what you already have. So if you're not staying up to date with what the technology you've already invested in, you're going to create trouble for yourself, because you're probably going to overpay, have way too many tools, and not be utilizing them. So invest in people that understand it and stay connected to the ones you've already bought. It's, and I get it. It's overwhelming. This is moving fast. Like, I totally get that, but don't add more just because you think it's not going to do it. Right.
Absolutely. And just building that actually makes a great point, Carrie. So the stuff you already have invested in, rather than, oh, I want to try the shiny new object, or I'm just going to add another piece to do this thing. That's why these people that know the connectivity and that can build these external integrations are so valuable, because they can be like, oh, you can actually already do that in your CRM, or you can actually already do that with your AMS. And they were about to go and spend an additional monthly subscription on whatever individual thing they wanted done. So because they're moving fast, you definitely need to stay abreast of what's going on with the products you invested in already.
So clearly you're in this industry. You've positioned yourself to know about data, to know about technology, to see where we're headed. I would love to hear the Thomas Mann view of the world. What is predictive technology? Where will it take us? How will it change the independent agent of today into the independent agent of tomorrow? And I'm okay if you use an Aureus example, but I think in a practical terms, what do you think the future of, or even what today is, of an agency, how they're going to operate now that we have some predictive tools?
So, you know, if there's a word I like more than process, Carey, it's predictive. So, if with that in mind, I will use a quick Aureus example. So, and the reason being, I don't know, Carey, another product for our specific space that is trying to, go this quickly on the predictive side of things. So, Lindsay, something I actually don't think you've heard me harp on this, right? So, general agency service model has historically been reactive, right? So, hey, I've got my CSR, there at your beck and call. Give them a ring, and they will take care of anything you need done. Cool, but that's still waiting on the customer to initiate this conversation, right? So now we've got our forward thinking agencies are trying to be proactive, right? They're automating those touches through a CRM. They're getting, ahead of the ball, and they're trying to, um, you know, what's the word? Prick or, get the customer to engage with them before they thought of it. They're getting ahead of renewals. They're putting in processes early. But the wave of the future that I've envisioned and that your mom alluded to is the predictive agency. So what can we do with this data? What can we do with these tech tools to anticipate where the ball's going to be and not have to have that outgoing touch point, which still ultimately relies on that client response. So something that we do in our Donna platform is give each account predictive likelihoods around three behaviors. So those three behaviors being what we call round out probability. So likelihood that they purchase more from your agency, retention probability. So what's the likelihood they just head out at the account level? And then at the policy level, hey, these policies are scheduled to renew in X time frame. Here they are based on what Donna thinks is the likelihood that they do. So the reason I have to use that example to answer your mom's question is we, um, as an agency, need to, or as an insurance vertical, when we implement processes like that, let's have what I call tiered workflows or predictive workflows around if this customer is this happy and our analytics tool, whether it's Donna or something else, says they're this likely to stay, right, then I can automate that. Like, hey, here's some awesome stuff our agency is doing in the community. We really look forward to serving you for another term. Click here if anything's changed major in your life, and that's rolling, right? So that's one flow. But then we really bring in the heavy hitters, our human capital, our agency staff, right? If an account of a certain value is saying, hey, they're not likely to renew, or they're not likely, or they are likely to churn. So that to me is where we're going, Carey, which is using the insights that some of these platforms can provide you to truly work smarter and more as human capital. We are an aging industry, right? Like the average age, et cetera. As human capital gets more expensive for senior people, and we're waiting on the knowledge gap to catch up on the folks coming in on the front end. This is where spending that human capital as effectively as possible will really change the game. Now, to get a little further away from the ARIA side of things on this predictive is just even if you're only using your own data, right? You could do this at a micro level and say, hey, this customer here, we've seen, they've been with us X number. I know this relationship, et cetera. You're already actually using predictive processes with your account manager at the human level. So why not go all in on this and let's really build some workflows? So that to me is where we're headed.
That's the reality of where everything's headed, right? To be quite honest, like that's why things end up in my feed that it predicts what I'm going to buy. Why in the world wouldn't insurance move in that direction as well? Predicting who's going to leave and who needs your attention or who's going to need further coverage to, to think about what's next in their life. all of those things are next in their business is the way that we should be running our business. If the data's there, if it's clean, if you have the right tools, you can be so much more effective in serving your clients and knowing what they need. Because the reality is insurance is complicated. The average person does not know what they need, and you can move to the advice rather than the transaction of the deal. In my opinion, it's a pretty exciting place for those that want to have 20 or 30 years ahead of them. But you've got to be able to implement it and not be frustrated by it and know that it's a journey. This is not you walk in one day, you flip the switch and everything's great. It's more of a, we get the tools in place, we use them, we learn, we clean up our data, we create processes that make the right sense in order to continue to use that information. And it changes the way in which we do the work. There's no question about it. I think we're in a revolution. The fourth industrial revolution is here, and it is here to stay, and it will be predictive. There's no two ways around it. So, yeah. Anyway, Thomas, we could talk forever. Yeah, we could talk forever and ever and ever about data and technology and relationships, none of which are going to replace that relationship. It's just not going to happen. It's just going to change how much you can get into the relationship if you embrace these things. But I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights with agents. If someone wants to get a hold of you and dig in further, Thomas, how do they reach out to you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'll make sure you guys have that the link for LinkedIn. But also just shoot me an email, whether it's about our product or hey, let's talk about effective implementation. I'm using this tool, etc. I've been around the industry long enough, Carey. I can connect you with someone at even if it's not Donna related. Uh, Thomas at Aureus Analytics. That's my name. It's easy enough. And otherwise, reach out. I'd love, as you guys know, I love talking this all day. But Carey, as we bring it home, I actually want to make one more point so that something you just said right there. Yes, it's a process, right? We've got to audit. We've got to keep going back, like you mentioned, and staying connected with the tools that we have implemented, staying abreast of what they're doing to change. However, it doesn't have to be full throttle or no throttle. Right. That's something I hear a lot as well. And it hampers successful implementation. Steady incremental progress on your process is what we're looking for. So you don't have to, one day I bought this agency that's all paper. And then the next month, I'm now using Zaps and data's flying all over everywhere. No, that's not how it works. Right. But you don't have to do everything all at once. It isn't that hard to, you use a light switch example. You can simply make small steps, and that's going to turn into great strides.
Well, thanks so much for coming on today, Thomas. I feel like there was a lot of value-packed advice and thoughts that were in this episode, and we just really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us.
Anytime, ladies. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and always a pleasure to see you both.